as Plateau State reels from attacks that have left more than 80 people dead and villagers fleeing their homes. Well, joining me now is Mohammed Ngoshe, who is a retired Assistant Director General at the Department of State Services, otherwise known as DSS. And he was also part of the Plateau State Command. Well, also with me is Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is a CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Well, you know, these reports really are enough to unsettle anyone and make you stutter and stumble sometimes. But let me start with you, former DSS boss. This development in Plateau State, let's narrow it down to Plateau State. What do you think is giving rise to this renewed, security threats on the Plateau?
Well, thank you for having me. And I am glad you are talking about it as a renewed crisis. Mm-hmm. The crisis on the Plateau is a protracted one. It's an age-long thing. And it is very important for anybody who wants to have a clear sight at what is going on and perhaps a solution to the problem, to have a clear understanding of the background. Mm-hmm. So, in the first place, it is a struggle for resources and redistribution of power between the settler and the indigenous elements on the plateau. That is the way I understand it, because that is the actual genesis of the problem. Now, politically, we have come a long way. Over 20 years now, we have been running democracy, and everybody is struggling to belong. Economically, resources have been distributed. Those who have gotten it have gotten it. Those who have not gotten it have not gotten it. And there is a struggle to have as much as possible. Land is also an issue on the plateau. People think the settlers have no land there. And those settlers claim they have been here for decades. I mean, in fact, almost a century. And this is where they belong, and they want to take piece of the action. So there is this struggle to have or not to have, to give up or not to give up. Mm-hmm. So the spirit of give and take is apparently lacking, and everybody is holding to his position. That appears to be the reason for all this resurgence. They have fought a lot of, they have had a lot of crises on the plateau in the past. Mm-hmm. And all efforts in the past to see that it abates has not yielded any result. So the struggle to me is a continuous struggle for this issue, or over these issues.
Kabir Adamu, why is this intractable? When you hear from the governor of Borno State, Zulum, and the Shehu of Borno actually crying out, saying Boko Haram is back, and then you have Lakurawa thrown in the mix. You've heard what is said about, the underlying factors, what's led to this situation. Your thoughts?
So we have three instruments that we're using to address violent extremism, terrorism, and to an extent violent crimes. I'll quickly mention them. The counter-terrorism strategy, the policy framework on countering violent extremism, and then the terrorism prohibition and prevention law reviewed in 2022. Now, till date, we haven't, as a country, evaluated the implementation of those three instruments, which means these bad guys are exploiting gaps. Right. The persons who created those three instruments envisaged a situation where our national powers, all our national powers, will work together towards the implementation of those documents. Sadly, what we are seeing at the moment are huge gaps that are being exploited.
Gaps in which?
I'll explain it. Let's use Bokos as an example. 6 communities were attacked.
In Plateau State.
And in Plateau State, Bokos Plateau State. From the accounts that we had, these were persons on motorbikes. Motorbikes, I mean, you can't put a motorbike in your pocket. Motorbikes move from one point to the other, and they need to a large extent motorable or good road surfaces to move from one point to the other. And you're not when you're done with the operation, you're not going to bury the ground and hide them over.
Right.
So the surveillance capabilities that were envisaged in those three instruments, where are they? How come none of the security agencies is coming out to say, we've used X technology, because I'm in a public space, I'm mindful what I say. Yeah. We've used X technology to monitor the ingress and then the exit of those motorcycles. How many persons have been arrested? What kind of evidences would have been gathered to allow for the prosecution of those persons? So by the time you pick those three instruments and identify the 5 elements in them, which ends in prosecution, you will find out that repeatedly, in the case of the Plateau State, in the case of Borno, incidents have happened over time, and we rarely hear of prosecutions.
Well,
so the deterrent element...
Listen, let me just butt in here. So sorry about that. Okay. I mean, the Chief of Army Staff, they visited, communities in Plateau State. One of the points he made, he said, look, we need political, more or less non-kinetic approach to solving this, crisis. Maybe not only in Plateau State, maybe across, all the areas where you have the security threats. Do you agree with that? Before I come to...
But before, I mean,
yes.
let's use Plateau State as in the course of our conversation. Operation Safe Haven, which has been in existence for the past 15 years. As far as I know, that operation has not been subjected to civilian oversight. We need to hear from the military. What have they been able to achieve? Why hasn't in 15 years the same challenge that it was created to address, why has that challenge not been addressed? One of the instruments I mentioned, the policy framework on countering violent extremism, it's purely a non-kinetic approach. So we don't lack the instruments for it. We have it. The political will to implement those instruments is what is lacking. If that's my response directly to the Chief of Army Staff. And it's not the responsibility of the Army. It's not the responsibility of the military. Our national powers would need to come together. That document... When
you say national powers, let's be clear.
Everything.
If you say it's not just the military, it's not the police,
it's the whole of government, whole of society.
Approach. Okay.
Yeah, that's what that document speaks to. But that document would need to be translated down to us as Nigerians. Let's understand the content. Let's embrace it. You as a journalist, you need to be able to speak to that document. The market woman who needs to be able to understand the content and help in the implementation. If today she sees those terrorists, who is she going to call to say, look, I've seen one of the killers? I doubt if the market women in Bokos have that kind of information.
Mohammed Ngoshe, I mean, you are former State Director, DSS, Plateau Command, so you understand the terrain very well, I believe so. I mean, when I said, the Chief of Army Staff is suggesting that a political, approach is the way forward, you seem to, nod in agreement. What do you think is the most sustainable way to address this crisis? Not just in Plateau State. You have Borno, where the governor is also saying, look, Boko Haram is back.
Good.
What's the way out?
I share in that view 100%. The Chief of Army Staff has hit it on the nail. I had the nail on the head.
Right.
Like he said, Safe Haven is a military operation to stem the tide. That is only the criminal aspect of it. He talked about an instrument that is supposed to be non-kinetic. But those people executing those instruments are proceeding from the point of view of vested interests.
What do you mean?
What I mean is, if you meet an indigenous Plateau man, the narration he will give you is the one that suits his condition, is the one that suits his thinking, is the one that will further his wish to get whatever he thinks that is due to him in the Plateau, on the Plateau.
Yeah.
And if you meet a non-indigen, a settler, which they call settlers in this crisis, will tell you his own side of it. And his own side of it is going to portray what he is going through, what he wants, what he desires. Nobody is talking of the actual thing on the ground.
Well, you've said that it's a multidimensional situation here.
It is.
There's socioeconomic and political factors playing out.
Yes.
Is there a one-size-fits-all solution? I mean, when you say the non-kinetic, the political approach, can it address the multidimensional facets of this
it can.
Situation?
It can. All that it takes is the willpower, the political will to do it. How is it going to be done, having the political will? The situation is so modeled up now that the moment you take politics, religion will get into it.
Right.
Social considerations will come into
Ethnicity.
it. Ethnicity will come into it. And so much coming into it. And these people, the current people fighting this war on the Plateau are not the architect of this crisis. It started long before them. Right. If, for example, we can get back to a situation where people like Baba Paul Gindiri can come up today and see what is happening, he will be able to assess what was when they were growing up and what is now. Maybe, I'm not saying that is what will
Unfortunately,
happen.
We don't have the benefit of that.
We don't have the benefit of that.
So from where we stand now.
From where we stand, what I think is going to happen politically is for line to be drawn.
Let me quickly come back to you. He mentioned the land grabbing issue. And I know we actually had a conversation about this yesterday when I had a guest on the show. How much of that, this issue of land grabbing, how much of that is part of the problem? What is the solution as far as that's concerned?
So one thing that I think we need to come to terms with is the problem is multifaceted, and it would be foolhardy to approach it from just one angle. Land grabbing is being put forward as one of the reasons for the conflict. Now, if that is the case, assuming and not conceding that is the case, what is stopping the government from titling the land? If they title the land, even if it's grabbed, one day the grandchildren of the owners of that land will show ownership. So the tendency to grab it would reduce. The second thing that is being put forward as a reason for the conflict is the mineral resources within the land. So what is stopping the state government from working closely with the federal government to do a study, understand the mineral within the state, and have some titling processes, either from the federal level, that would reduce the tendency. Now, I'm not disputing the possibility, because it's been documented all the way from AU down to ECOWAS with different institutions. They have shown clearly the correlation, positive one, between conflicts and mineral resources. So it's possible that there's somebody, driving the conflict in order to extract the mineral.
Could this be internal somebodies or external? Or is it
external, definitely, and possibly
a combination.
A combination. But the point is this: we should stop the killing, and the best way to stop the killing is a couple of efforts. Previous state government plus the current one, they've done a lot in establishing peace platforms, including the Plateau Peace, Commission. But from the little that we know, the funding of those processes has been deficient. The second element, Ngoshe, these state security structures. I would give the example of Lagos. Lagos has a functional command and control center where early warning systems are fed, and then they are able to immediately inform the public security departments, who now have the resources through the Lagos Trust Security Trust Fund to now go immediately. But in the case of Plateau State, that has been bedeviled with this challenge, I doubt if there is a command and control center. So that responsibility goes both to the federal government and to the state government. There are two operations at the moment in the Plateau: Operation Safe Haven and Operation Rainbow, which is the state level operation. The persons
which some interests are saying should be disbanded.
Maybe not disbanded.
Rainbow is complicating.
Maybe not disbanded, but it should reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Great.
The accusation I'm hearing that it does not reflect certain elements of the so-called settler population. So perhaps the best way to make it inclusive, have elements of that population within the structure.
The Sultan of Sokoto recently said, look, we need to begin to look seriously at the issue of indigene and non-indigene as a way you know, allow non-indigenous who've been there for 15 or 10 or 15 years, you know, to have a sense of belonging. Do you think that's a way out? In addition to that, yes, we keep talking about this non-kinetic approach, but have we done enough of kinetic in a way that will deter, you know, would-be criminals?
Kinetic does not deter in most situations. Kinetic interdicts what is happening. It does not deter in the sense that the criminals, so-called criminals, are not seeing themselves as criminals. They are seeing themselves as fighting for a cause.
Rebels with a cause.
Or the cause. If you tell a Fulani man he is a criminal in Plateau, he will tell you he was born and bred here. His parents are here,
all right,
and they belong here. So you cannot come and overnight tell them they are nobody and they should go. Where are they going to? So the man is claiming. So kinetic cannot stop that kind of desire, that kind of feeling. It's just like religion. That's like ideology.
Yeah, yeah.
So like...
Okay. We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, we have to leave it there. Mohammed Ngoshe is former State Director, DSS Plateau Command, also retired Assistant Director General of the Department of State Services. Kabir Adamu, joining us, also a security expert, is the CEO, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. We'll have to have these conversations again as a continuing one.